department with Dr. S.K. Banerjee. There was a F8 microcontroller there, and I did my BTech project on controlling power system relays using the F8 microcontroller at the time. So the journey actually began there, and I worked for, and so at the first available opportunity, I joined Intel to work on microprocessors, and basically remained there for over 30 years. Everything that I wanted to do, I was fortunate that I was able to do without, in fact, doing things that I did not want to do. So the interesting part you brought up about the MBA was that that was probably a misguided attempt at diversifying or broadening my skills. So I did do the MBA, but fortunately, I didn't really have to use too many of those skills because I was drawn back into the world of technology and technical management. So that's really been my career, which is a rather siloed but satisfying career in the world of digital design and technology and microprocessors. So with that, let me turn it over to you.
Wonderful, Sunil. So it's really interesting that when you said that you sort of went to diversify to acquire business skills, and then you realized that you wanted to do hardware, and then continued that for until now, right? Which is, and the interesting comment I felt was that you sort of remained a technology person, right? Meaning a design person throughout. So I think that sort of segues nicely into the first question that has been pulled and put up. So so the question that came out is that how has your mindset evolved as you navigated your professional life? What do you like best about your current role? And clearly you've had a lot of experience, and now if you look back, how would you advise the 20-year-olds around here who are starting their career? Because I think there was this MBA thing, and a lot of our students sort of are gravitated that way. So yeah, so that's the question. So over to you.
Okay, I think it's a multifaceted question. First of all, with regard to advising 20-year-olds, I don't think I'm really very qualified for that, because at the time that I was 20-year-old, I think the third year in IIT, we were really, that was the first programming class on the with Fortran, taught by Dr. Patak, with the Russian EC1030 computer. So obviously we have the 20-year-olds today on campus have a vastly different experience. So I don't think I'm really qualified to advise the 20-year-olds today. Now, having said that, I think the question really is about career planning. And my advice there are two things. I think one thing is that if at all possible, follow your passion and don't be guided by what others tell you or what others guide you. I think all over the world there are forces that perhaps steer you into one direction or the other. As we were growing up in India, I think there were some forces, economic forces, that would guide you towards choice of one career or the other. Outside, even today, when the country is wealthier or in wealthier nations, there are other forces. So what has stood me in good stead is to try and pursue what you enjoy, what you like, because eventually if you're going to work for 40 years, you cannot work in something that you don't like, you don't enjoy. So I have been fortunate in being able to have a satisfying and lucrative career while still doing what I wanted to do, what my strengths were, without having to worry too much about improving what my non-strengths were. So I consider myself fortunate about that. And of course, for that, a lot of it is also chance. You have to have the surrounding support. You have to have good managers who steer you in that direction. Your family has to support you in that venture. So I think the top advice really is to try and focus on what you really want. Now, the other part of it is that if you do want to make the early part of your career is the time to experiment and do things. If you're not happy, to break out and do something. It may be doing a PhD, it might be being an entrepreneur, it might be doing an MBA and going into business. There's nothing wrong in that. Well, with or without an MBA. So I think the early part is good, and the reason I bring that up is, one is that it's good. It's not good to have regrets, and that is it becomes harder later in your career. And usually, it is good if you don't if you follow different paths and you don't have regrets towards the end of your the middle or end of your career when it is harder to switch. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sunil. Okay, wonderful. Sunil, I think this whole comment about work on what you enjoy is really important, because I think on campus, I think one of the lessons that we have here, right, is that there are a lot of pressures to um, be the best, and not just in your own eyes, but in the eyes of society, right? uh, Based on certain measures. And I think what you said was that you have to live with your own um, choices, right? And do stuff that you like. Do stuff for 40 years, so you better like it, right? And probably nobody's going to come and sort of help you in that part. Um, so that really sort of, that's sort of a personal advice, and I think it's very, very pertinent today for the community here. Now, the other element of this that the community here sort of does is academics and research, and Professor Chatterjee did talk about it. So you are sort of in the best place to answer this question, because uh, we are always sort of curious, right? That how much of what we sort of do, what we sort of imagine, would actually get into something real, right? So the next question is on those lines, and which says that, to what extent does semiconductors, electronics industry get into basic research today? And what is the pipeline for basic research, say from academia, to get translated into products in the industry, right? So again, I think you're the best person, because you probably have seen a lot of this, and I think the community would like your advice, and also probably to make sure that we are working on relevant things. So over to you.
Yeah. So yeah, very very good question. I think I'm extremely impressed to about the statistics. I knew part of it before, but the shift of IIT towards more towards both a postgraduate education and in particular PhDs, the number of PhDs that are working and who come graduate is extremely impressive, and is absolutely the right focus. Now, coming to so that's really great. I think obviously 40 years is a long time ago, and there were very few PhD students, and I think because of the infrastructure at that time, typically they would take a long time to produce PhD quality work. So I'm assuming that today, with much vast, bigger infrastructure and communication and talent and all that, not only is IIT producing a lot of PhDs, but also that the time that students take to do PhD is a manageable amount of time. I'm sure that's the case, and that in itself will attract and draw more PhD students and build a stronger, both a stronger career for the students, a pipeline for additional faculty, as well as a stronger institution. So that's a good thing. Now, to your point about semiconductor, it's vast. I think we are at an inflection point today where many of on the semiconductor side, I think we have been predicting the end of Moore's law for a long time. I think we just cannot allow Moore's law to gracefully end. It's not the right thing for society, because the needs, the gains that Moore's law has brought about increasing, basically reducing the cost, reducing the power, increasing the computational capability towards, I would say, towards the world at large. that is a force that is a big driver of productivity and increased increased happiness, really increased wealth and happiness for the whole world. So it's almost like it's a force that cannot stop. It can only be stalled occasionally, but it cannot stop. And with that, then it almost behooves the minds of the good minds all over the world to focus on that as a challenge at various stages of the pipeline. There is the basic research pipeline, there is the innovation pipeline, invention pipeline, there is the innovation pipeline, and then there is the execution pipeline. Each phase of that is extremely important, and clearly the research phase can mostly be done in universities or closely tied between universities and industry. So I think it's a very, very important phase, and I think that IIT seems to have a good, solid start in that. And with the infrastructure that is there today, the communications and information flow today, there is no reason that IIT cannot be a top institution. Now, in terms of very specific things, there is semiconductors and advancing process technology. There is the field of hardware, which is architectures, innovations in low power, innovations in edge computing, translating artificial intelligence. I mean, this is, of course, a big phase, but bridging between that and the actual devices that are there either in the central data center or edge. So it's really a very vast area, very vast and rich area. And I would say that they are almost all both economically important and important in the sense of advancing the well-being of people all over the world.
Thanks, Sunil. So this is really, I think you hit the nail on the head that, I think we really have the infrastructure. Thanks for sort of, believing in that. I think we do, though, and I think IITs are definitely growing, right, in terms of being able to get research talent in, both at the PhD level, master's level. Undergraduates are doing much more research these days, writing papers. So definitely, the trends are right. You also talked about the vast areas in semiconductors, and I think for this community, the E community, I think the message should be loud and clear that there's a lot to be done here. So now I sort of going back to sort of something you said earlier, right? That you advise that it's better to break out and do other things early on in your career, and sort of puts the next question. So what precipitated your change to sci-fi more recently, right? We're curious to know what you wanted to explore in your profession at that point of time. So
yeah, I think it's actually interesting that you asked that, because so I as we discussed earlier, I had a long career at Intel. Even in my first stint at Intel, I joined in 1981 and continued to 2014, and progressively got I enjoyed every project that I worked on. The first 10, I would say about 10 years was hands-on design work in microcontrollers, microprocessors. I was fortunate enough that was I would say, a pretty good era of design innovations. So I was fortunate to work on a portion of what would arguably be called the world's first superscalar microprocessor. And then we worked on the first generation of what was at that time, what we call today the out-of-order microprocessors, the P6. So these were very hard technical problems in an area that that was really fascinated and interested me, and with some of the best people at the time who were at Intel. So that was the first 10 years. After that, the next 10 years was really at a project management level. We were still working on individual projects and bringing those projects to market, not so much in hands-on work, but coordinating the work of dozens and hundreds of people on a particular project. And then the third phase was really at the corporate level, developing teams, developing other leaders, building new capabilities, improving capabilities, basically at the portfolio level. And during that time, one of the rewarding experiences was actually to develop the capability in Bangalore, the Intel India in Bangalore, which actually had been started earlier, not by me, but it had been started earlier and was a really small undertaking and had gone through some ups and downs. But it was one of my passions to grow, develop the leaders there, trust the team, empower them with significant projects that both required collaboration with more experienced teams, but then also gave the opportunity to do autonomous innovation and autonomous execution. So we now have the Bangalore team is an equal site, equal teams to any other site for Intel, as for many other companies. And it is the second largest, I would say, national site outside of the United States is Bangalore. So I did all that. Now to your question about the change. So at that phase in 2014, I was really felt like I needed to make a change, and for various personal reasons as well as it just felt like I'd done a lot of things, and going back to the question about for wanting to do something different, that's what was triggered. It was not triggered by any particular mission towards doing something different. In fact, so I ended up leaving Intel, and here's the interesting part: is that the part that I really regretted, and that's why I brought this up earlier, was that I regretted not having done technical work for a longer period of time. Whether that regret was justified, warranted or not, it's what I felt. I wish that if I could lead the life again, I would probably do technical work for more years than I had. So I decided that it was not too late to do something about it, and in fact, went back and took some courses at the local university to brush up my technical skills, and subsequently found out that that may not be the right thing, but at least I could work at a more junior level as a first-line manager doing technical management. And that's the opportunity that I got at Sci-Fi, which is a very interesting company promoting a new open architecture and working with some extremely brilliant people who were recent graduates from Berkeley. And I thoroughly enjoyed the 2 years that I spent there, basically, working as a first-line manager, first-line technical manager again. So that's kind of the journey there. Coming back to Intel was really not part of my career plan, but things took their own course. There were some big changes, shake-ups at Intel, and in the path of you can call it maybe some COVID-inspired effect on my brain, I decided to jump into the fray again. So it was definitely not part of my career plan.
Wow, that's very interesting, because I mean, so first of all, I think the fact that Bangalore is such a vibrant site today, right? I think you would know that Bangalore, there's an Intel India fellowship, PhD fellowship, which actually is really attracts really great students back to the campus, right? In fact, there are, and you did talk about growing great leaders. So there are these guys like Sri Subramani, who actually is a collaborator with me. So, and it's an interesting project. So he's a microarchitecture person. I do memories at the hardware level, at the device level, and we find common ground. this is very interesting because, as you said, this is about collaboration and innovation together, right? Which is great. I think the sci-fi, the experience uh, is also sort of something that I think it does appear to me that you are an engineer at heart and you would like to go back to the details, um, uh, and coming back to Intel. Uh, so so clearly, uh, you're constantly challenging yourself, right? And that seems to be something that I think the community can read from all that you've done. There seems to be very clear, sort of 10 years in detailed design work, 10 years in project management, then corporate level development, and then you go back into details. Um, so you constantly keep challenging yourself. So I think the question that comes up is, what are your go-to productivity hacks, right? I mean, people do feel, um, they sometimes slack off. Engineers sometimes procrastinate. I've recently heard that that's a good thing. But what are your go-to productivity hacks in terms of remaining consistently focused at work?
You asked that question, and I was wondering what really to give as an answer to that. It's a very broad question, and I think at a personal level, uh, I don't necessarily think. I think how to relate to that. I will answer it more in the context of perhaps management and help. I would say that technical managers, can give to projects and brilliant individual people. So here is the analogy I will say. So there are different. Maybe I'll broaden it a little bit rather than talking about that, and maybe this will be of some interest. So different companies if you look at individual student in the context of doing a PhD or a master's project at IIT or any other university, clearly the student is left largely to themselves with guidance, with capabilities, infrastructure, financial help, and frequent or occasional guidance from their guide. And it is really the very, very much of a self-motivation that propels the student to move towards completing their master's project or their PhD. At least for master's project, there's a deadline. For PhD, even the deadline is a little less flexible. So it's really a vast open thing that draws them forward. In a corporate environment, there are different philosophies. What I heard is that at least in the early phases, Elon Musk at Tesla, or more particularly SpaceX, generally had the feeling that all you had to do was bring brilliant people together, and stuff would happen. Automatically the rocket would build itself and take off. And he quickly realized that was not happening, and he brought in the need for technical management. I think the Google went through that same phase. They had their first bringing a lot of very brilliant software people together, and some things did come out of it. Of course, the search is still arguably the best product, but not much was done. So they started investing in management development as well. Intel was actually more fortunate. Andy Grove, one of the co-founders, even though he was a technologist, and that he's one of the earliest books he published. What is that? The Physics of Semiconductor Devices, or something like that. But he soon realized that while he may have been a good physicist or a good technologist, that to build a company, he had to create a culture and a management culture very early. So he focused a lot of that. So at Intel, we grew up with some of the, and this is where I tie it to the hacks, what you talk, go-to productivity hacks. We grew up with a lot of focus on, I would say, execution, how to channel the forces of individual innovation towards getting complex things done. So, discipline, setting goals, monitoring goals, tracking, indicators when you find that some things are after every cycle of work, making accurate predictions, pausing after a cycle of work is done, doing a retrospective on it and saying what went right, what did not go well, improving and fixing things that did not go well, and things like that. Basically, systems like that I think at Intel, right from the early days, we put a lot of focus on. So I don't know so much about the individual productivity hacks. I think those are up to the individual. But I think at a system level, I think we have to have a balance between just letting chaos reign and letting the forces of innovation reign, which might be what is appropriate in a university setting versus more of having a system for getting things done through goal setting, discipline, predicting outcomes, tracking to those predictions, having a system for making course corrections, not just tactically, but also strategically, what we will do better next time and so forth. So I would up-level that question more in that space. Those are important things to consider.
Wow. So literally, you sort of turned this from an individual productivity position to a systems productivity position, right? Which is, I think that's the technical management part, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think that this is very poignant here because on campus, you definitely find a lot of individuals who are brilliant, but there is the creative chaos that sort of reigns supreme. And this idea of sort of, parsing things out, planning, evaluation, these are almost computer science, architecture, algorithmic, even, right? So maybe a follow-up question. So do you think that this is something that can be taught on campus? Is that something, or this is something that must be learned in a different environment, which is more corporate? Because I do feel that this would, to some extent, this would help. And by the way, I just want to point out one thing, and I'm sort of going off script a little bit. In the US, it is definitely true that PhDs are very sort of lonely pursuits. In India, it's a little different because there are a lot of master students, which typically doesn't exist in the US. And our undergraduates have this. There are these dual degree programs which have this 1 year of research. So we do build a sort of a pipeline, and there is a little bit of a management or mentorship that a PhD student must do. Which I definitely think is a big deal for our students. In fact, I feel that really makes us probably our students, ahead of the American counterpart. So what do you say? How do we sort of add this element to the campus?
Well, I think so. I think there are two parts to it, right? I think one part was, I'm sure the campus also has other disciplines, the management school and all of that. So in terms of whether you can teach management, you can teach technical management, that the obvious answer is yes. It's a very, very well developed aspect of education with its own taxonomy and own channel, I would say curriculum and so forth. So in fact, technical management itself now is almost an individual group, an individual curriculum in itself, engineering and technical management. So I think I was only referring to how seriously companies take it and where they are in terms of letting chaos reign, as you put it, versus very disciplined execution, which has been Intel's you can call it at least culture, whether it's a strength or weakness, you can decide for yourself. So that's the answer to that. Now, meaning that I'm sure that within IIT or elsewhere, technical management, engineering and technical management is becoming, I would say, has become a discipline in itself with its own curriculum and all of that, which is good. And if there's if it's anything that I can help with that, although I doubt it because it's a very well developed curriculum, I think that's fine, and we do need graduates of that. Now, I think your question is about PhD students and the research itself, and there I think we have to be a bit careful. I think it is just good to be goal driven and have some guardrails so that people make forward progress and learn faster, learn better. But at the same time, you have to realize that the end goal of this research is two things. One is research, and the second one is the development of the students' potential themselves. So it feels to me that I think the biggest thing that you can do there, I think, is to have a community. I think if you have a vibrant community, a center of expertise, a center of research where there is a lot of connectedness, a number of PhD students and master students and bachelor students who are all working on a similar problem, even though you may not necessarily organize them and measure them and so forth. It's the community and encouraging teamwork and communication and collaboration between them may be the best recipe, and the PhD guide that creates such a community, both through their own talent, both their own technical reputation and talent, and their capability for inspiration and attracting students. That might be the best. That might be the best environment you can create.
Wonderful. So this whole discussion is in the backdrop of COVID, right? And it seems to me that Intel is a large corporation. It's extremely successful, and I think there was a lot of help that I think Intel would have been asked of, right, by the community. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how did Intel as a corporation help people out during COVID? Have working styles changed since the past year? And how has Intel Design Engineering Group tackled such challenges this year?
Yeah, frankly, across the world, I'm amazed at how the world, and particularly the world at large and the technology world adapted itself to this sudden shock to the system. We had grown up with the convent. Maybe it's part of a spectrum because we had grown up in the 80s and 90s, to give a perspective, that great complex things could only be done if you are all together on the same floor. In fact, there was some early research that said that communication, even if you were on different floors in the same building, you were almost like in two different countries and things like that, right? So that was the folklore that was embraced. Then the wave of what I call globalization started coming in the late 90s. Then clearly, because of various forces, well, first in the manufacturing space, of course, it was the advent of China, but then more in the technology space, it was actually more the advent of India. Right? India became a giant in software development, and I would say software development and export. First in what is rather more in the business accounting space, the 2000 what is that, the 2000 scare, all of that, right? The Y2K and things like that. But then that took on a lot of momentum in terms of more advanced software development, and then in the first decade of 2000 also spread to other areas, hardware and innovation as well. So those rules were broken because basically people had to collaborate. It was economically as well as from a technology point of view, imperative to collaborate actively with people on the other side of the world. So those rules were broken. And I think in COVID, maybe it's the third one that said that we have come to the phase where virtually the office and the benefits of co-location are almost completely swamped by other benefits that come from what you would call distance collaboration. So I'm not by means no prophet here. I'll just say that to me it's pretty amazing, and it's almost as if external forces. In the first case, the advent of China in manufacturing and India in I would say the software that propelled it, and now the second phase is a rude shock to the system coming from an unfortunate pandemic. But I don't know how it will evolve. I think it can only be a good thing though for countries like India that still have vast potential to contribute to the world at large through the educated and skilled talent pool that is still there.
So, in fact, I think Sunil, this is really amazing, as you've sort of recounted, that people can now be across geographies, right, and yet find the right collaboration, right, without co-location, right. And in fact, this discussion itself is sort of a testament to that, right? Because I think we are all far away, we are all at our homes, and yet we are sort of mind melding. And this is an interesting opportunity. So I think the question that sort of it segues to is, given that this is now a very global world, right, and talent can be anywhere. We could be sitting in Alibag or, with your laptop and doing experiments, right? So how can India compete in semiconductors today? What is the one thing that India can do to lead, IIT Bombay can do in this case to lead the charge for India? You're in a great place to answer this question. And given that, this co-location is no longer important and Bangalore has worked, what do you think, how do you think we can sort of drive things?
Yeah, so I have a very simple view of it. I think in terms of first, there is largely in the world of semiconductors, the world has evolved to the fabless model, and this really happened 25 years ago with TSMC and other companies, which means that there's a very sharp demarcation. Intel is the only company that essentially is trying to do both, which is do manufacturing, which is highly capital intensive, and doing basically the design and product development, which is somewhat capital intensive, but mostly it's really innovation, intellection, management of marketing, product development, and so forth. So the world has really moved in that to be split there. Now, I think India is from an ideal sense, it is set up very well for both, but hardly any progress has been made on the manufacturing side for various reasons. I think largely related to what is perceived to be inadequate infrastructure and other things that I will not get into. So I think there's a vast opportunity there. And in fact, with the continued growth of semiconductors, maybe that aspect of it is something that at a national government level, something can be done to drive that and become at least a part player in the manufacturing space. But leaving that aside, I think that India is far ahead on the product development space. And one part that will continue, I think, inexorably is product development happening in India through, I would say, as arms of the Western world companies. So the Intels and the Nvidias and AMDs and Qualcomm, everybody has large product development happening in India. And I think that will just continue. I don't see any force that stops that. And I think that the building of strong institutions, not just the growth of more IITs, the growth of, I would say, more high caliber institutions, as long as that happens and the government invests in that, that I think government and industry develop in that, I think that will happen. I think the part that I think that we can do a better job of is private investment and venture investment in these areas. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and from my experience, there isn't enough money. Most of the money is going towards, I would say, software and more of software commercial investments. And I would like to see if more money can be invested in product development, design and product development there. I think there's vast opportunity there. And I think if there's something that can be done either at the government level or elsewhere to spur venture capital there, I think that would be the great that would be the great breakthrough.
So, I think you've really touched the manufacturing and the product development positions. In fact, you'd be happy to know that IIT Bombay, we were commissioned to develop this detailed project report for a semiconductor R&D center, roughly costing about $3.5 billion US. And this is sort of being considered at the highest level of the government. And the push, of course, is extremely sort of poignant now, given that if I think every in the news, chip shortages are causing Indian automobile industries to sort of reduce their production. This point about money being not available for hardware, we should have a longer discussion on this. This is something that I think needs to be there to break the cycle. I think there are enough matured product designers today in India. So I think the time is right. I think the chips have been sort of are down, and I think some things has to give. So sort of breaking away from this world, I think we are very curious to know something about you as a person. So we are of course discussing technology and research and products, but we want to know a little bit more about your non-academic side. So what is the non-academic experience from IIT Bombay, which of course we're curious about and we won't share and tell anybody else, that continues to shape your professional and personal life outlook, and how important are these experiences to offset and balance the roller coaster of professional life? So
I think there are actually many. I think you mentioned earlier in that a large part of our life, both professional and personal, was shaped by the 5 years. At that time, it was 5 in IIT Bombay, and I think the one that I am very grateful for was the development of hiking and trekking, as we called it then. Yes. I was an avid trekker, both in these Western Ghats, the Sahyadris, during the monsoon and early winter time. There were frequent treks that I participated in through the support of the IIT hiking club, mountaineering and hiking club. I was also fortunate to have three different experiences sponsored by IIT that we did trekking and hiking in the foothills of the Himalayas. So that definitely spurred interest, which then carried over throughout my life. I've been a very avid hiker and backpacker of multi-day treks, and that has both been very rewarding, satisfying to me in terms of as a personal hobby, and it's something that is that I cherish very, very much. So I'm grateful for that. But there's many other things. I think friendships and relationships have been good. That was a very formative period of our time to develop friends, and many of us remain friends, and many of us this phase or earlier phase are also very interested in trying to maintain the do what we can for IIT Bombay, whether it is financial or otherwise, and that in itself is also I would say, a passion at this point. I was, last year I was touched by the challenges of getting the semester underway in the COVID environment and led this laptop drive. I am actually pretty interested in other opportunities going forward uh, to work with the EE department or the computer science department or anyone to see how we can basically make it. And you guys are on a great journey. You have a lot of work to do, and I'm willing to help.
So I think we have 5 minutes left. But I think we have done well today. I think that we don't have time for questions, but I think these questions came from students. So I think that therefore these are well represented. So I think we've had a great, discussions. And what's most interesting, I think, is that you've talked about friendships, relationships that sort of survive, years that we make for lifetime at IITs, in our undergraduates, and the students here. They would be probably comforted to know that the guys that they hang out and mess around in the hostels, they are here to sort of be there for the rest of their lives, bugging them. I think IIT Bombay and the E department, of course, is one of the most progressive departments. But the reason that it could be further progressive is through the influence and through engagement with alumnus like you. And the fact that you've given us essentially a blank check to sort of look you up and ask you our questions and place our concerns is we feel empowered. And as a community, we welcome you back, and we welcome you to be here, to be with us and share our experience. With that, I think I would like to thank you. And Swaroop, may I sort of request you to make the last comments? By the way, I wanted to also thank the ACR's office, which is led by Swaroop and Neha and others. Of course, Professor Chatterjee, who's taken over as head, to build on this effort, because I think this is one of the first efforts on campus at the department level. And Swaroop is leading it. So Swaroop, thanks again.
So Professor Fernandez wants to say something. Professor Fernandez.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Kishore. Congratulations, Shenoy, for getting this award. I'm really happy. Maybe my Kishore, I take the liberty of inviting him for the department. You would have done that by now. Maybe
No,
if you have done.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, Shenoy, we invite you to the department, visit us, come and spend a day with us. A lot of things have changed over the years. Maybe none of the teachers who are taught you may be around, but then it doesn't matter. We are around 70 of us, all new faces, new, young and vibrant department. Visit us, see yourself the things that we are doing, and maybe guide us in what to do better, and maybe the department to take it in a next level. Yeah, we would like to have some sort of active role from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you very much. It's a great honor, and as I said, I'm willing to help, not just with not just with questions or advice, but if there is some projects I can help support to whatever extent I can. I'm actually very, very, very interested. I'm very passionate about IIT Bombay, its prospects, and I want to do my small part in whatever support. So I look forward to your reaching out and asking for wherever help is needed. I'm truly I'm truly committed to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have you visited in the recent past, IIT Bombay?
Unfortunately, the last time I had really an intensive visit was only for the 25th anniversary in 2005. After that, I visited casually, but not.
At that time we didn't have a separate. Now we have a separate building. It's a GG building.
I see. Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. There was supposed to be an on-site get-together, obviously, in 2020, and then we postponed it to 2021. But because of this Delta variant and all that, that's not going to happen. So it has just been virtual. But I look forward to maybe next year, next spring, winter, maybe in 6 months it will all be okay.
Yeah.
Are we having the classes are now are in person, right? The campus is in full swing now?
No. Classes are still in the online mode, but we are having, roughly we are having 10,000 students, but out of these 10,000 students, around 4,500 students are already back in the hospitals. So they're mainly PhD students and finally MTech students, and mainly the research crunch students, those who are facing problems by having lectures in online mode.
I see.
So I just, before we close, I wanted to point out to Sunil that Professor Fernandez was the head for Professor Chatterjee, and he got this alumni outreach initiative started. So, and it's been going on now under the leadership of Professor Chatterjee. So I have really nothing more to say. We have a lot to digest that you have given us, and we will certainly we will come back to you, Sunil, but you must come back as soon as COVID permits and the circumstances permit. We look forward to, as Professor Fernandez said, host you here on campus. And so thanks a bunch for making time for us and our students today. So they have really turned out in numbers that, to be honest, I had not anticipated. So I thank the students who supported the ACR team in various ways, and thanks to them for organizing, and thanks to everybody who turned up. And I'm sure you would consider this time very well spent. And for that, thanks one last time to Mr. Sunil Shenoy.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, and looking forward to meeting you in person or collaborating in some other way. Okay, good. Yeah, good night.
Okay. For you, a good day.
Good day.